Now, there's been a lot of noise around sunscreen use after a now infamous video on a certain Vogue website went out. So I thought it was a really good time to review sunscreen use, what to look for, and which one to choose depending on what your skin concerns are. And we all know how important sunscreen is, I think, and certainly I think the uproar to said video tells me that we're all really understanding the importance of this daily sunscreen habit as a behavior in terms of the importance of maintaining skin health long term. But it is the step that there is a resistance to because formulations of old have left scars. They have left us with the memory of what can go wrong when you use an ill-chosen sunscreen. And I'm no exception. I can remember a holiday in particular in my early 20s where I used the wrong sunscreen on my face. I think I'd come away without product and I broke out. My skin was an absolute mess for the duration of the holiday. And, then trying to cover up, on holidays, light evenings, on the beach, all disastrous. Thankfully, formulations have come a long way, particularly in the arena of breakouts, and formulations have been developed that don't clog up the skin, which is, I think, a huge advance because we know how important sunscreen use is to acne-prone skin because of the tendency for those dark marks to darken up when you don't use sunscreen. So I think let's talk through which sunscreen type works best. And I also want to review with you what the right amount of sunscreen looks like, because I think it really does highlight why you need to find the one that is the one for you, one that you can actively engage with and enjoy using, but at the correct quantity, because we know that the single biggest mistake people make when it comes to sunscreen use is under applying. And it's for that reason that I often encourage patients to have almost a sunscreen wardrobe, which sounds a bit decadent, but essentially if you're doing sport, you're playing tennis, your sunscreen needs are going to be different to when you're going to the office, and they're different again to potentially what you might use when you're on the beach. So let's get into it. Let's deep dive into sunscreen. So first things first, the amount of sunscreen, as I said, matters. So we're talking about facial sunscreen today. Now, I've come with my trusted measuring spoon, which is a half a teaspoon, 2.5 ml size spoon. And the reason why this is important is because that's the correct amount, thereabouts, for doing a face and a neck. Now, it looks fairly benign, but let me show you. I'm going to be using a Flawless Gossamer tint in 1 to show you the quantity. But essentially, if you don't use that sort of an amount, you're not getting the number on the tube. And this is not a rule I made up for my sunscreens. It is the rule for all sunscreens. So when people say to me, but gosh, that's a lot, that's not going to last very long, it says, well, that's just the way sunscreen works. You are, of course, fine to use half the amount, but know that you're going to get about half the protection level. And I think what's important, particularly for that everyday behavior, going to the office or whatever, is it's not about preventing sunburn. Of course, if you live in the hot country, be careful, but it's about the UVA protection. So that's the insidious creep that we are exposed to every day, even through winter, even through glass, that over time prematurely ages the skin. And that's why a high SPF broad spectrum sunscreen is the one you want to go for, because that's the one with all the UVA protection in it. So this one is an untinted, a tinted mineral sunscreen with titanium dioxide and zinc oxide. So as you can see, that's a lot. That's for your face and your neck. And that's why it's important you find the one that you really enjoy using. Then the other question is, what kind of filters do you go for? Do you go for chemical? Do you go for physical? Now, physical filters work by both absorbing and reflecting UV rays, and they sit on top of the skin. And the two that we use are zinc oxide and titanium dioxide. And then we have chemical filters, which are organic chemicals which are derived from carbon, and they absorb UV and convert it into infrared. Now, we'll talk about the different conditions and which filters tend to work best in those instances now. So As I mentioned before, acne is probably the condition where there might be the biggest aversion to wearing daily sunscreen, but it is crucial. It is important as a part of a way of managing post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation. And it's also important because you'll be using ingredients like retinoids, which increase unsensitivity potentially. So I think in the past, the texture of sunscreens have also been off-putting. So I think the good news is that formulations have advanced. It is now possible to find non-clogging sunscreens with the label non-comedogenic, and those that are matte finish potentially if your skin is particularly oily and you're acne prone. I think a dewy sunscreen goes down less well when you're blemish prone. In terms of the filters, these can be chemical hybrid when it contains both physical and chemical filters, or all physical. Then on to redness and rosacea. So I think this is an instance where mineral sunscreens really come into their own. So zinc and titanium, they tend to be the filter type that irritates rosacea-prone skin the least. And I think that the optics of mineral sunscreens often diminish the appearance of redness. Even with an on-tinted sunscreen, it can help conceal a little bit with the background sort of persistent redness in the skin. But then you factor in a tint and you end up with a little bit of coverage in conjunction with a gentle UV protection. I think that can be a real winner. Then coming on to pigmentation-prone skin, so for example, melasma, or those who suffer from sunspots, here I think is where you need to look for the added benefits of iron oxide, something that is often found in in foundations because it's the pigment that gives them their tint. But in a tinted sunscreen, which is the usual way to find iron oxides, they give extra protection against visible light, high energy blue light in particular. So this is something that's really, really helpful in those who have melasma. Some of the best products are actually the pigment containing compact foundations that come from French pharmacy brands like Avène and La Roche-Posay, and Colour Science also do good products with iron oxide in. So I'd highly recommend seeking out a product like that. The other consideration I would say for melasma-prone skin is to look for something water resistant in warm weather. This will really help ensure the product adheres to the skin for longer and is less likely to be sweated off, which can be a real problem if you're prone to a bit of sweatiness in the top lip, as all of us are in warm weather. So I think water resistance is a really good thing to look for in a sunscreen if you have melasma. And then the final group that I think warrants some consideration are those looking to tackle the signs of aging, skin sagging, wrinkles, pigmentation, uneven texture. And I think that's where a sunscreen with extra can really help. So niacinamide is probably one of the best combinations of active ingredients in a sunscreen format. I'm not a fan of retinoids in sunscreen for obvious reasons. I think it works best because it's a vitamin that's easily absorbed by the skin and has a myriad of benefits, and it boosts skin barrier function as well. So it can be used in sensitive skin too. So a great active to look out for in your sunscreen, and then you get that whole serum in a sunscreen effect. And then the final consideration is sensitive skin and eczema-prone skin. And I'd probably include perioral dermatitis in here too. This is another area where all mineral sunscreen really comes into its own. And you know, in context of the clinical practice, I wouldn't be able to practice without all mineral sunscreen. I think it's that important. Given how many individuals have skin problems that manifest as sensitivity. So zinc and titanium, thank goodness formulations have come such a long way. They're no longer the heavy, cakey, white cast finish on the skin that they used to be, thanks to micronization of the physical filters. So find a good one, please use it correctly, and oftentimes they form great base for makeup as well. They can have a sort of almost smoothing effect in terms of the appearance of the skin. So worth shopping around to find the one that works best for your skin, but mineral is the way to go. So sunscreen is there to be used correctly. Don't use it as a highlighter, people. I think that goes without saying. And don't put products on top of it, like moisturizers, just makeup, if being used. But really, on all seriousness, there is one for everyone, but just know how to use it correctly, dose it right, Visualize it with measuring spoons if necessary so that you know what you should be using on a daily basis. And I promise your skin will thank you, both in terms of how you age and in terms of skin cancer prevention. This is obviously super important if you live somewhere where the climate is good all year round. So I hope that was helpful, guys, and I'll see you again soon. Bye for now.